viewers. I'm Oliver Damian, and I'm here to interview Caitlin Cook on the future of relationships and sexuality. How are you, Caitlin?
I'm doing pretty well, Oliver. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Maybe we could start by if you give us an idea of the work you do relating to relationships and sexuality.
Sure. So I work in mindfulness and sexuality with a tantric background,
Mm-hmm.
and basically explore sexuality from a place of the relationship you have with yourself,
Mm-hmm.
the relationship you have with others, and the relationship that you have with the whole world. And sexuality is such an interesting node in life because so many different aspects of how you express yourself sexually or relate to yourself and your body are also impact other parts of your life. So your ability to express yourself, your ability to really be spontaneous and feel confident and assertive, or your ability to surrender and let go. These are all things, they affect the way that you might relate to your mother, the way that you might interview for a new job, or how you might choose your travel plans. So my exploration of sexuality comes from a very personal place of wanting to deepen my own self-love and feel more freedom in my own body. But yeah, it's not limited to just the bedroom. It's how you speak with your neighbors, how you choose to dress yourself. It's your confidence to really be yourself in the world.
So it's like a core part of our being.
Exactly. Yeah. And so then I do private sessions and workshops and write resources and things in that space.
Awesome. And how have you been finding the experience of teaching people these different things?
Well, I mean, for me, it's a total pleasure. It's one of those things where, because I've experienced such incredible shifts in this area, it's something that I can't really help but share with the world. It's not really a strategic decision or a career decision or anything. It was just a real natural kind of enthusiasm to share it. And it's interesting in terms of teaching because, we see personal trainers for physical health, and we see doctors to support our medical kind of health, and we get recipe books to help with nutrition and like meal ideas. And so we have different people and places that we seek guidance in particular areas of our lives. But somehow sexuality, which is such a huge part of our being, as you say, we just kind of learn vaguely how to do it, in high school through our friends and porn generally, and media, and maybe some like books we read. But other than that, we don't really get a lot of tuition on how to relate to your body, how to explore desire, how to really expand and like push the edges of your authentic sexual being. So it's amazing to be able to teach this stuff and for people to break through some of these I don't know, like modesty that they might have or fears about talking about sex. So it's really amazing to be able to be broaching this territory that for a lot of people is private, very private.
Yeah. And what's your view on how technology affects relationships and sexuality? I mean, technology in the broadest sense of the word.
I mean, technology is massive and it affects us in so many different ways, for better or worse. I mean, even in terms of and not to say that technology is good or it is bad, but like even how much phone use you might have and how much emailing you might be doing and how much technological administration you're doing instead of actually just being still or present or really connecting with someone or when you're having dinner with your beloved and your phone's on the table, and there's always like the messages that you're getting, and then you're looking at them, and the kind of disruptions that you're having from this present connection with your partner. But then there's also, like things like Tinder and stuff as well, where your ability to connect is expanded, and it's a bit easier for people because it's more convenient, and it's a little bit less scary, and you've got more access to a greater amount of people. And I guess it depends if you mean like electronic and digital technology, or even technology like condoms and stuff, because obviously and the pill, like we know how we relate to sexuality across all these technologies is really changing as they emerge.
I guess it's what do we mean by technology, because in a way tantra is a form of technology. If technology we mean practical know-how, or it's interesting that nowadays when we mention technology, most people equate it to computers.
Exactly.
But technology is much wider than that, really. If you really, in the broadest sense of the term, like even meditation is a form of technology. It's a technology for consciousness, right?
So how do you define technology?
Well, I guess I would go back to the Greek origins. So I think, if I remember correctly, in the Greek way of looking at know-how, they have episteme, which is knowing what you know, and techne, which is more the practical. Techne is more in the head, and what do I sense, and techne is more knowing. And then they have another word for wisdom, which it escapes me now, the term. So I guess the language, like for example, other languages like the ancient Greek, they're more nuanced in the different ways they describe these things. Whereas I think in our, like even in love, they have different forms of love. They have agape, they have eros, and then they have philein, which is like brotherly. So it's I guess it's how we define it, really. And that's the thing with language. We could go really philosophical in the sense that sometimes it's a view that language is really how we structure our reality. To some extent, I believe in that, because like I remember, because English is my second language, and I remember there was a point in time when I stopped translating from Filipino to English, and it kind of changed the way I thought, which is interesting to observe, So I guess if we define technology as know-how or practical stuff, then I guess there's an overlap between technology and culture and stuff.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And in that way, Tantra is definitely a technology. If it's a sort of a framework or an approach to knowledge, and then how you then practice that. I mean, I guess in a way, like nearly everything could be a technology.
Kevin Kelly, he was one of the founders of Wired. He wrote this book called What Technology Wants, and he actually coined a new term for it. He called it the technium, which includes law, culture, and all, as to distinguish it from technology, as in the Silicon Valley technology. It's a much bigger realm, and his view is that it's also evolving. Like we're evolving as biological creatures, and then technology is also evolving. And then there's this. He wrote an earlier book where he talked about like the distinction between the born and the made is blurring, right? So the things we're creating, like with deep learning and machine learning, they're becoming more alive, the machines that we create. At the same time, we're starting to disentangle the machinery of biology. We were just talking about the brain earlier, and with the brain and genetics, and people are making artificial life. So there's these two streams, and they're quite intermingling at the moment. And And I guess that's an interesting way to look at it. What would sexuality look like if we know like how hormones and biological things influence it, as well as how the mind influences it? What's your view in that? Like in a way, tantra is you're trying to cultivate a form of sexuality, right? You're influencing it rather than just letting it be unconscious or letting it just do whatever, right? Yeah.
Yeah, so it's yeah, exactly. It's bringing conscious awareness to intimacy, but
Mm,
it's that's one aspect of tantra. Tantra basically, you know, a lot of spiritual traditions, there's very particular ways that you can access God or the divine,
mm,
and it'll be in prayer, or it'll be in meditation, or it'll be in particular yoga poses, or at church, or when you're serving. You know, there's particular ways of accessing God, whereas tantra sees everything as an opportunity to access God. And whether that's like how the food you're eating, or serving and meditating and yoga, definitely those as well, but it's also you know, even like taking a poo,
yeah.
or having a fight with your beloved, and how you're going about that, and or dancing,
Mm,
and so particularly where there's moments of like really high concentration of life force, or you know, that
mm,
intensity of living and experience, those are really high concentration moments to access God. And obviously in intimacy, those that's high life force moments. So so there's lots of practices to really accentuate that, and to bring that meditative awareness to experience, and to not just going through the motions, or just doing something because you have this, you know, animal urge to just like release some tension, but actually yeah, entering the experience with an intention of connecting, and contacting that sense of oneness, which you can when you're meditating. Or and particularly because it's it doesn't tantra doesn't have to be done with another person, but
mm.
when it is with another person, then you know, you know, like that saying that hell is other people.
Yeah.
For so many of our anxieties and neuroses, it's often to do with other people.
Mm,
Fear of being judged, fear of not being good enough, fear of not being loved, fear of being really seen. And so
mm,
tantra is a really interesting space where you're really opening up and really becoming your most vulnerable and also most empowered self, but with another person often as well, which yeah, and it's such a high intensity kind of experience. And high intensity, I mean, I just mean it's not like you're like running really fast on the spot, or there's like, it's not necessarily physically intense. It doesn't have to be. You don't even have to be touching the other person to be having these really intense experiences, but it's more just an intensity of what it feels like to really be seen, and to really open yourself in the presence of another person, and to be witnessing that person in that same kind of place, while you're simultaneously in that place as well.
mm.
Yes.
Amazing. Interesting. Because I remember doing one of your workshops where we picked an object and I just feeling it. And yeah, there's something palpable that changes if I put attention on something.
Yeah.
What's your view on objects and people and sexuality, like sex toys? Because there's like it could go yeah, there's lots of sex toys now, and they're becoming more accepted.
Yeah.
And then some people are even going further by creating sex robots. And
Yeah. And like
yeah.
VR, I'm really fascinated by the VR, sex and VR,
Hmm.
you know, and particularly when you're combining objects and with that as well. So you're having the tangible physical experience,
Hmm.
but also this perceptual experience too, and the two together, it just really, yeah, what a ride, what a place we're at as a species. Yeah, so objects and sex. Well, yeah, so the workshop that you're referring to is one of the touch meditation workshops where,
Yes.
your hands have got the third highest density of nerve endings after your lips and genitals.
Mm-hmm.
So, and lips and genitals are often considered erogenous zones.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't often think of hands that way. So, but they are, like, hands
Mm-hmm.
are, as erogenous as these other areas. And in fact, the whole body, is an erogenous zone. So, yeah, so the hands, where they meet objects, when we our hands touch objects all the time, and our
Mm-hmm.
bodies touch objects all the time. I've got these headphones in my ears, I'm wearing these clothes, like my
Yeah.
body's constantly in contact.
Mm-hmm.
But it's often not conscious contact. So,
Mm.
and also your mind can't be conscious of everything all the time. The way, even when looking at particular scenes, our mind will just blur out the sides because it's not necessarily important. So we just focus on the things that are important. However, when it comes to intimacy and sex, sometimes our mind, because we're also in these, living lives that are very fast, they're very full,
Mm.
we're creatures who often, think about the past and the future more than we are thinking about right now. I think I heard a statistic, and I think it was 44, psychological studies that they've done with people, and 44% of the time we're thinking about times and places that are not here and now.
Ah,
So,
okay.
and if you think about your life
Mm.
and or your day, that means for a really significant portion of the day, you're not actually where you are. You're thinking about something else entirely. Anyway, that happens a lot in
Mm.
intimacy as well.
Mm.
And what that does is it just kind of dulls the experience. So bringing that conscious awareness and that attention to what you're feeling right here, and also slowing it down as well, so that your brain can actually absorb all of the information that your nerve endings are sending your brain, means that the experience, then the sensation just expands
Mm.
exponentially, just by bringing attention to it. You're not doing any special sex moves, you're not using any special lubes, you're not saying any chants necessarily. There's nothing really
Mm.
special about it, except for you're just slowing down and bringing every single ounce of attention to the sensation. And then, of course, that changes the experience entirely, and your pleasure just expands. So, and that can be done with objects, and that can be done with hands. It can be done with someone else's body. Yeah. And personally, I mean, I think for me, one of the things that I love about Tantra is that, and my exploration of it, is how it took away the rules and the expectations of how to do sex.
Mm.
So before, I was very performance orientated. I was very self-conscious. I really had to make sure that I was making the right sounds. They were making the right sounds. I was pulling the right moves at the right time. I didn't have too much belly fat showing, and, all these different things. And exploring authentic desire and moving away from should and just moving into, well, what actually feels good has been huge. So I'm reluctant to say toys are great and everyone should use them, or toys are not great and no one should use them, because I think it's really just a matter of what actually feels good for you. And personally for me, I've experimented with a few different toys, whether they've been crystals or silicone, or and I kind of feel like for me, I just prefer flesh.
Yeah.
Like I don't actually enjoy toys so much. I find the vibration to be too monotonous and constant. Like I love when people and things are touching my body. I love for it to feel like they're responding to my body, not just on this automatic setting. Like that's like, for me, my favorite kind of lover is one that's really listening to me. And so I find sex toys, listen. Like I just push some buttons and then I've got 10 different options for what they can offer me. So but but there's also some that I've heard of that sound amazing that I haven't tried yet. So it's not like I've counted them out as I don't like them. Never say never. But personally I just prefer flesh. And anyone, so not to say that you should or shouldn't use them, but my main thing there is just to use them consciously. So to really tune into the feeling, to really tune into what your intention is, and not to necessarily be lazy with it as well. I think sometimes, particularly with vibrators, you can become really attached to them because they offer a very particular type of stimulation that you just can't get anywhere else. But just to be really conscious with the use of them, and that you're not training your body in ways to be dependent on that. And I think that's an interesting thing with technology, how we become so dependent on what technology can offer. And even say with Tinder as well, losing your, because it's easier to just message someone, and if they reject you over Tinder, it's not as painful potentially as if they rejected you in real life. And like the kind of guts that it takes to actually approach someone and say, hey, I like the way you dance or something. Like that takes a lot of guts to do that. Whereas on Tinder, it's a little bit easier, which is great. And also means you don't actually have to go out. You can just, be dating people from the comfort of your own couch. But yeah, I think that's one of the things with technology and sex, is just to be just aware of the benefits of it and the ease of it, which is awesome. But then just being aware of where dependency kind of could creep in as well.
That's very interesting. And I guess we live in interesting times because like things are becoming more fluid as ever in terms of gender. I know Australia's a bit lagging behind. We still have this postal vote on saying yes to same-sex marriage, but the rest of the world is forging ahead, where and then there's transgender rights and everything's becoming more fluid. So I guess the question I wanted to ask you is, what do you see would be the future of relating and sexuality in the next, let's say, to the year 2050? What do you see would be happening? How would it evolve for you?
Wow. There are so many factors going on there. Hey, because there's the political aspect, as you mentioned, with the postal vote, with the same-sex marriage. So, and I feel like increasingly there will be more and more inclusion and acceptance of different, of who gets to love who and how we get to express that. And then there's, I notice more and more with the work that I do that I feel like I first started exploring it about 6 years ago, and it was I didn't really know anyone who was into it apart from the community that I met. But now it feels like, and I don't know if it's also living in Melbourne, which is its own bubble too, because there's so much tantra stuff here now, and even in Wellington, people who I would think normally wouldn't be so into it are like, oh, can you tell me about your workshop? I think I might like to come. So like even culturally, there's a lot of shifts towards a lot more curiosity and openness, and really exploring these territories which would normally be private or I don't know, just not things that you would talk about. So I mean, my hope is that it would we would continue on and just become more and more open and inclusive and curious about our sexuality and our well-being, that isn't just about our medical health, and our nutritional health, that our care for ourselves and our care for living full expressed lives we would also start to be looking more and more at sexuality. And so I feel like that we're on a trend toward that, but I also feel like I'm in a bubble too, you know, like I have my friends and my community who share, you know, the views that we share, but there's a whole world out there too of different politics and different cultures and different different kind of moralities, I guess. And then bringing technology into that, like I cannot say what I think 2050 is going to look like. In high school we studied Minority Report, the film. And that's set in 2050, and so I've kind of always had this since watching that I've kind of been like, oh my god, is that what 2050 looks like? And they developed that the technology of that film. I think it was a Steven Spielberg film, and he got a think tank together to produce a vision of what 2050 could look like realistically, what they thought it could look like. And I know, you know, like the Jetsons, you know, they literally thought that we would be in flying cars by 2000. So who knows what 2050 is going to look like, but I feel like it's like what would sexuality look like in Minority Report, you know, like I don't know.
I mean, because in that world there's pre-crime, right? But I mean, if you extrapolate, would they have, you know, that right now we have premature ejaculation, premature orgasm, where you could know your orgasm before it happens? I don't know. I'm just being silly about it.
That's so funny. Who knows? Possibly, like you just, the way that these that different technologies pop up and that you would never anticipate. I mean, even things like Airbnb and you know, different rideshare apps and things like that. I love share economy technologies like that. And there's just so many things that we'll just never, or even Facebook, like who could have foreseen that was going to happen, and that social media would take off in the way that it has. So I can't imagine what will happen in the next 25, 30 years of what develops. I mean, it's exciting. I'm a little bit nervous. I'm not a technophobe, and I'm not a Luddite either, but there is a sense, like, I love nature, and I love I don't know, those deep, real, authentic, just human experiences, and technology can support those, but in many ways it can get in the way. So the idea of I'm just protective. I'm protective of my human form and my human experience, and I if anything, I want to go closer to being to accessing God and the divine through my human experience, which is, you know, the tools that we've been given to get there. And sometimes I just get a little bit scared that technology can distract us or get in the way. What about you? What do you think about technology and sex for 2050?
In terms of technology, I think some part of it is media bias, in the sense that there's this thing called, like, in the media they only feature, it's like neomania. They always look at, this is the new iPhone, this is, because I just attended, there was this recently, the Sydney Festival of Democracy, and then there was a guy from the Netherlands. They're trying to fix news, they're trying to fix journalism, and he made a very good point that the way journalism is being taught in schools now, and it's exceptional reporting. You actually report what's exceptional. So if you base your reality on what the news is, then you will miss reality, because they report what's not long term. They report the sensational, you know. Like, they won't report that, you know, life is good, that crimes have been declining if you look at it statistically. They'd rather report one stabbing, you know, and because it's sensational. And the way he said it. It's like news is like the way we do news now. It's like the weather report. But very few people actually talk about the climate, which is more long term. So that's one aspect of it. There's this neo-mania, we want the new things. But Nassim Taleb, who wrote The Black Swan and Antifragile, talked about there's this thing called the Lindy effect, where if a thing has survived for 50 years, it's more likely to survive another 50 years. And he's quite right, right? Like the way we cook our food hasn't changed since a long time ago. We still use fire. We still, in fact, we're going back to artisan cooking. You know, this like the chair I'm sitting in has been a chair since the time has been in its form since the time of the Egyptians. We still drink wine, which has been since the time of the Bible. You know, like Lot. Is it Lot who got drunk when he planted vineyards after the flood? Noah, yeah, got drunk. So this the real. If that's what he said in according to Taleb, if you want to predict the future, just remove all the new stuff that isn't likely to last, and look at the things that have survived, like drawing and writing. Drawing is still the most expressed. Like I'm doing design, and in design, there's still a lot of emphasis on freehand drawing, because that's the quickest way to express yourself, and that's how you ideate instead of waiting an hour, spending hours in Photoshop or Illustrator. If you want to, the best way is to have pen and ink, and we've been doing that since the caveman days, right? So there's this. Although people like to hype on the new stuff, they forget how
old we are, how ancient these things
and
are.
there's something powerful about things that survive. That's why when you talk about nature, that's why we should always defer to nature in learning stuff, because nature experimented with this technology for millions, if not billions of years. So it survived that long. And there's also this thing about evolution that we think man, like humans were the top of the no, that's wrong. Everything that's alive now is at the top of their own line. So it's like a multi-line, like the dogs we have now, the whales we have now, the ants we have now, they've all survived millions of years, right? So we're all at the forefront of evolution, everything that's alive now. So it's wrong to think that humans are at the top of it. Everyone is everyone that's still surviving now, at the forefront of evolution. Anything else you would like to mention in relation to what we've discussed so far?
Yeah, I think technology is such an unknown for me. I feel like it's one of those things where, I have a little bit of apprehension about it. Like I'm not one of those people that is like super excited for the next piece of technology to come out, because I do feel a little bit of a as I say, I feel protective, and I don't want to compromise in a sense. It's kind of like I just want more and more connection, you know? And I want more, and when I say connection, I mean that genuine connection with people that isn't filtered with a sense of fear of judgment or distance or misunderstanding, you know what I mean? And connection, greater connection with myself, where I'm also not judging myself and distancing myself from my own body. And you know, greater connection with a sense of belonging to life and to this planet, and you know, and so my hope is that technology doesn't get in the way of that. And but in many ways, in my own experience, I feel like it kind of does. I don't know. I'd be curious to know how you experience this too, because I'm not against technology. And as we've said, what is technology, and in a way, in the way that Tantra is a technology, it's brought me more closer and closer to myself and to life. But like things with like email and some, in some ways sex toys, and virtual kinds of ways of relating, which for some it's interesting. I'm just going to quickly go on this tangent. I feel like in some ways virtual ways of relating can also create far greater connection to aspects of ourselves which maybe we don't have, we wouldn't be able to enact in real life. It's kind of like fantasy land. Or I remember even when I was 12 and I was first kind of becoming a sexual being, and I went on chat rooms and I would kind of like dirty talk with people in chat rooms, and it felt safe because it meant that I got to express my sexuality without having to actually do any of the stuff that I was saying, or even being at risk of having to do any of the stuff I was saying. So in that way, technology was offering me this amazing freedom to really express myself and test edges of who I was as a sexual being at age 12. Maybe I was 13, I don't know. But yeah, like, and so I love moments like that where technology is an aid of us becoming our most authentic selves. But I do have a sense of apprehension when it comes to us creating more distance between each other, or distance from ourselves. I wonder how you feel about that. If you feel like you're more of a technophobe or a technophilic kind of person, or if it's not as easy to put them on ends of spectrums like that.
I did I'll send it to you. I did write a piece on this, on this techno utopia. People like Kurzweil and the Singularity people, they believe that it's inevitable, exponential growth, and then we'll hit a point of singularity where machines will become smarter than us, and then they're going to create their own machines, and they're just going to outrun us, and we can live forever, and we can bring back the dead. Ray Kurzweil wanted to bring his father back from the dead using technology. So there's a utopian version, and then there's a dystopian version where Terminator or the machines become intelligent and they want to exterminate us, right?
Yeah.
I think I'm more in the kind of technological realism part of it, wherein I think we are in it and amongst it, and we create it collectively. Technology is something that emerges from interactions of people, and it's never neutral in a sense. I think the highest questions in relation to technology is always ethical and philosophical. Like the internet, the whole philosophy of the internet was you create the protocols to link different computers as simple as possible, and no one controls it. And it was a very utopian vision. They even didn't consider people will do harmful things when they first did the internet. They had no firewalls, and then later on, oh shit, we need to have some firewalls because people are doing bad things with this technology.
Yeah.
So I guess, and now we're I think on a tipping point where there's a forces in the internet trying to centralize it. Like everyone's going to Facebook, but that's not the whole point of the internet. It's like going back to the days of AOL, where if you want email, you have to be signed up with AOL, and then they opened that up so that everyone can have email, not just within the walls of a company. So I guess it's the only thing I worry about is if it becomes a monoculture, in the same way that I think we've lost a lot when we move from polytheism to monotheism. Like in the good old days where there's so many gods, like in Hinduism and the Romans.
Yeah.
It was a more inclusive society, whereas once you get monotheism, this is the right way, otherwise you'll be damned. We lost a lot, and it's happening also in in agriculture, right? Like like nature, it creates thousands of species, and that ensures its survival. Whereas like what happened in Ireland, they just had this one. They planted one variety or one species of potato. So then when they had the potato blight, the whole country got hungry because there was only one type of plant they were relying on. So,
Yeah.
so I think as long as we keep, so I think having dissenting voices is important. Like with now with the internet, I keep listening to people I don't agree with because because the danger is if you live in this echo chamber, there's a bigger chance of it imploding because you're all thinking the same.
Yeah.
That's why I sort of created my own job in a way. I call myself a confluence wrangler, trying to wrangle different points of view. And yeah, instead of polarizing, you're liberal, you're conservative, these are just labels. We're more complex than that. That's why, like with my series, Complex Humans, I'm trying to show that people are complex. Don't box them into one label, right? You know? So I guess with technology, as long as we don't have one mono technology, I think it should be okay. And as long as we're aware of what's happening, and again, going back to Kevin Kelly said that in the future, the most important thing is learn how to learn because everyone's a novice now because everything's changing so fast. You have to continually learn stuff. And also, like your question with technology, I guess answers are easy now. You can Google anything to find an answer. What is really important now is, are you asking the right questions? So asking questions, I think, is the more important now in the future. And I think very few people really know the art of asking really good questions, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And possibly even knowing to ask questions, right? Like even knowing to question at all.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the, again, coming back to the sexuality, is the only reason I started asking questions is because my brain started to break. Like I developed depression and anxiety and disordered eating as a result of, these myths about how I thought sex should be and how my body should be and that kind of thing. And so it was only because the system started to decay, my own internal system, that I was like, oh, something's gone wrong here. I need to ask some questions about this. But sometimes we don't ask questions until stuff starts going really not quite right.
Crisis points. Yeah.
Yeah. But having that curiosity and critical thinking before, just all the time, and not to say that you can't rest and just like chill out and just like enjoy a cup of tea without having to question it, but knowing, I really like that about knowing the questions to ask.
Yeah.
And knowing to ask questions.
Yeah, that's why. Yeah, we both in our other lives we're both in the field of design, and that's why that's why I chose to leave the field of the law and study design, because with design I could be working all the time and it's okay. I could be sitting in a cafe and look at everything. Oh, that thing is not well designed. So, but it's just curiosity. How can I make that better? Like people are queuing. Can we make that better? Or this spoon doesn't feel. With design you can be perpetually questioning everything because you know that the built environment, someone designed this thing, like this door that I'm pushing. Someone thought of that, and you can redesign that if you really want to, right? And we can redesign our lives even. Yeah.
Absolutely. I remember the first time that I realized that was at university, when I just realized that the world was created, that the government was created. It wasn't just something that landed on the planet from God or something. It's like, no, humans thought that this was the best way to go about it. And the justice system and the medical system, and like, we made this, and if we made it, then we can unmake it, or we can make it a different way. And and similarly again with sexuality as well, it's like we think that sexuality just gets handed to us, that this is just how you do it. There's a five-step process. There's first base, second base, third base, and make these sounds, make sure that they have this kind of experience, and then you can be done with it. But it's taking that redesign mentality to everything, and not just like going to McDonald's and getting your Happy Meal. You're choosing from your five piece
options
menu, and being like, okay, cool, but actually being like, okay, well, what do I want to eat? And maybe I could grow the wheat, and maybe I could make my own pasta, and I could make up my own recipes, and talk to my friends about what recipes they're using, and for sure.
So good, so awesome. So I guess it's we could wrap this episode up, and I really enjoyed our conversation. Maybe we should do another one.
I'd like to.
Yeah, it's been so fun. So maybe let's end with I'll end by asking you two last questions. So the first question is, what's the best advice you've ever received?
Trying to think of advice that I've received. I mean, I've sought a lot of advice, definitely. I'm constantly asking people for advice and like perspectives on how to do things. I think the thing that really stands out to me, and I can't remember who said it to me or whatever, but it's just it's like authenticity and listening to yourself and trusting yourself, becoming, I guess it maybe I probably got this through my tantric explorations, but connecting with yourself as if you are your own lover. So not constantly fighting yourself or judging yourself or questioning whether you're good enough, but actually how you would look at a lover, the generosity you would give them, the attention, the patience, the compassion that you would give someone who you just adore, and the way that you would interact with their body, the slowness that you would be touching the backs of their knees and massaging their feet, and whatever, however it is that you connect with the people that you really love, being able to turn that around for yourself and actually give that kind of attention and love to yourself. I feel like discovering that as that's actually a thing that you can do, I think that's been the best piece of advice or awareness that I've gathered. Definitely, it unlocks everything. If you can be an ally with yourself in that way, everything changes. The way you have sex, the way that you eat, the way that you work, the way that you travel, dress yourself, make love, everything.
Awesome. And the last question is, what advice would you give to the 20-year-olds out there listening or watching? What advice would you give to them, like when they're fumbling with their sexuality, with their self-image, their eating?
Yeah, probably that piece of advice, but also to tune into your authentic desire. So as part of having that lover relationship with yourself, where if you're with someone that you really love, like you want them to be enjoying themselves, right? Like you would ask them, like, or if you're giving them a massage, like how would you like me to massage you? How would what on your body really hurts right now? Like, let me massage that bit. And so it's asking them, like, what do you really want? And so that would be my advice to like my 20-year-old self and any other 20-year-olds out there, is just to really tune in and to ask yourself, like, what do I really want beyond me pleasing anyone, beyond me satisfying anyone's ego for being a good girl, or I have to be a radical progressive girl, beyond all of those expectations, all of the shoulds, for what do I really want?
Awesome. Yeah, I want more episodes with you. Thank you, Kate.
That was fun. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Caitlin, and thank you, subscribers, for listening. And we'll see you again in the next episode, and in future episodes, we'll bring Caitlin back. Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you. See you.